good morning and welcome to the first episode of the District 7820 Morning Show. We are delighted to be here and we're ready to get started. And that was the start, as one would expect. So we are now going to ask you to switch to the speaker view in the upper right corner of your screen so that you'll be able to see our guest, Jeffry Cadorette, in full screen when we get underway. So if everyone could do that first, that would be great. And I will stop sharing this screen. And if you're on speaker view right now, you're probably seeing the lovely Alana. So I'm going to ask Jeffry, who I think is on, to make sure that we to make sure that Jeffrey's there. Jeffrey, if you could say something, we'll know that you're there and we'll switch to you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jeffrey. And look, there you are.
Hi.
Wonderful.
Hey, I was
So
glad to see the what's the name of your dog?
Beacon. How could you forget Beacon?
Because I have a lot of mascots in my world. I was up in Halifax, I guess, a while back, 3-4 weeks ago. I thought I had killed that dog when I threw it into a beam, so I'm just happy to see that it survived.
He survived. It was close. There was a bit of an incident. I've tried to downplay it, but yes, we did have an incident. So Jeffrey, I'm just so pleased that you've survived what you've experienced since that time. We've all had a bit of an unusual month since then. And so I'm thrilled that you're here and that we've got a bunch of folks who are interested in hearing more about what you've been up to. So I'm just going to do a little quick introduction of you so that people know who our special speaker is this morning. So Jeffrey, as everyone knows, is the Rotary International Director for our zone, for 2 zones, in fact, that are paired. He's coming to the end of his 2-year term. He's a Pennsylvania-based Rotarian. He's been there a long time, since university, I think. He used to be here in this area into property work, real estate. I know he has 3 adult children who are scattered around the country, very successfully and gainfully employed. I know he's interested in motorcycles and airplanes and maybe even jumping out of airplanes and lots of other great things, and has been racking up an awful lot of air miles up until recently. And so, Jeffrey, maybe you could just add to that with a little bit about what your role is and how that role has changed in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, can you hear me? Did I unmute?
Absolutely, you're on.
Well, it's been extraordinary for all of us globally, this pandemic, and I do have, Louisa, and you also have, I have 2 months, 21 days, 2 hours, 56 minutes, and 59 seconds left in my term, as you do.
Yes.
I don't have that countdown clock on my phone because I'm looking forward to that. I have that on my phone to remind me of how much work we have to do between now and then. Yeah, I was up in Halifax. I'm not sure if I was in Mexico before that or after that, but about 4 weeks ago, I was in Mexico representing our president at the North American Youth Exchange Network annual conference. And at that time, in spite of the fact that we had kids, students all across the globe, we weren't even talking about COVID-19 just 4 weeks ago. And the following weekend, I was on the phone all weekend with staff and NIAM people trying to figure out how to get kids home. Borders were blocked, airports were closed. And I'm sure for you, as it is for me, this is just an unbelievable time. I cannot even get my hands around this pandemic. In Pennsylvania, we are sheltered in place. I do go to the office a couple of hours a day, but we are required to wear masks when we're outside now. It's been extraordinary. And what I've been saying to people, and the president and I were on a call, Mark Maloney and I were on a call maybe 10 days ago. We had 450 people on a Zoom call. So we've right now got 44. We had 10 times that amount. And Mark and I had a conversation. And we talked about the disappointment. I mean, Louisa, your term is not going to finish the way you thought it would. My term, when I was in the boardroom on the 18th floor at One Rotary Center last October, I didn't know that would be my last time in the boardroom as a director. because our April meeting will be virtual, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. And so, you know, district conferences canceled, president-elect training seminars canceled, district assemblies canceled, many of them taken online, which is good, but disappointment. And what I've said to people is we need to acknowledge that disappointment. It's there, but we need to quickly pivot to determination. And that determination is to keep Rotary from going dark in North America during this time, to keep the lights on. I was getting far too many emails from club presidents saying, just FYI, we've canceled our meetings until April 30th or May 15th. We'll talk to you then. And I was like, no, don't do that, because you won't have a club by that time. You need to stay engaged and connected with your members. And this is one of the means that that can happen. And you need to keep the lights on. You need to take care of your members, and you need to take care of your community. It's just going to be in a different way. So pivoting from disappointment to determination. And that has really worked unbelievably well. I'm on 5 or 6 of these type of calls a day. I was on one night, I did a breakfast club in Australia last night, my time. But what I realized a couple of weeks ago was that I needed to stay better connected with our governors. And so we had our first Zoom meeting of all of the governors and governors-elect in zones 28 and 32 2 weeks ago. We have our second meeting tonight. And my goal for the last 2.5 months of my term was to drive connectivity down into the clubs, to make sure that clubs don't go dark. And that's working. And witness this, you know, morning show. I'm the virgin member of this morning show, I guess. Yay.
You are. Mm.
And thank God I don't have any stuffed animals to throw around. But it's a privilege to be here with you. And it's an opportunity, because I've spoken to more Rotary clubs in more districts in the past 2 weeks than I ever would have been able to if I had to get on an airplane. And clearly we are all grounded. We just grounded all staff and volunteers through the end of May, and I suspect that we're going to do that through the end of June also. But this mechanism that we have, whether it's GoToMeeting or Zoom, is just an incredible way for us to stay connected and to be connected. We now have 51 people here. Yay.
Yay. So Zoom has taken off. That must be one of the organizations that is truly exploding as a result of this. And we certainly have lots of clubs that have begun to meet either as a club or committee meetings, board meetings, lots of things going to Zoom, people talking about alternatives to fundraisers, looking at online fundraisers and auctions and all those kinds of things. So those things are happening. What else are you seeing in other than that, if there are other things that you've observed that people are doing to maintain those connections and to have engagement so we don't go dark?
Well, one thing that I've enjoyed seeing is people have actually been inducting new members on Zoom meetings. There are people in our communities that can't access us in our traditional models of breakfast, lunch, or dinner clubs. Many clubs have been checking out the list of former Rotarians and inviting them, and a lot of them have been showing up on Zoom. And I suspect that some of them will re-engage. Many clubs have been taking, excuse me, I don't have COVID-19, by the way, but I've been talking too much, and so excuse my voice. Many clubs are taking the money that they would normally spend for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, putting that into a fund and using that to buy food for food pantries, or buy food for paramedics or frontline hospitals. People have been doing online auctions as fundraisers, online raffles, because they can't do their normal in-person type fundraisers. I'll tell you that one of the things that I get asked a lot is, why don't we being Evanston, why don't we divert all of our polio money to COVID-19? And categorically, I say the answer to that is no, we can't. It's 2 different battles, 2 different wars, and we need to win each one of them. You'll know that the trustees loosened up the guidelines on grants about 10 days ago and loosened the criteria so that districts could access money for global grants or district grants for COVID-19 purposes. You're going to be hearing more about that shortly. They put $1 million into a fund that districts could access for that new loosened criteria grant for COVID-19. We did have our first virtual board meeting about 2 weeks ago today on a platform called Kudo, K-U-D-O. Kudo allows for simultaneous interpretation rather, because I don't understand Korean, Italian, or Japanese, and my colleagues on the board don't understand my version of English. So we had our first board meeting. It was about 2 hours. Everybody was present from around the world. And that's where we made the hard decision to cancel the Hawaii convention. It was the right decision, but it was a hard decision.
Sure.
And we're now working on, the staff in Evanston and some of the volunteers are working on the possibility of a virtual convention of some sort. You'll be hearing more about that as we work out those details. So I've been seeing a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation, which is refreshing. What I think is, and Mark and I were talking about this just last night, this is a silver lining. I mean, none of us wanted this pandemic, and clearly it has had a huge economic impact on all of us, and will continue to. But there's a silver lining, and it's this connectivity. I think that it would have taken us 2 to 3 or 4 more years to get here without this pandemic. But here we are now.
Yeah. And
so I said, I was talking to Mark last night via email, and to some of the staff yesterday via email. And what I said was, this is a pivot point for us. So the way we did Rotary before the pandemic, we knew it needed some improvement. We knew that it needed some, not even tweaking, some overhaul. The way we're doing it now is probably not the best way, but it's the only way we have right now. But what if we took a hybrid of how we used to do it, how we're doing it now, and took a comprehensive look at the entire organization, the way we do trustees meetings, the way we do board of directors meetings. What if we were to look at the entire organization and find the best ways to integrate technology into how we do Rotary? What if a governor, we spend an inordinate amount of money on governors visiting every club in the district. And of course, you don't need to do that anymore.
No.
You don't need to do that anymore. I'm one that will say that sometimes that's the worst club visit of the year, is the one where the governor shows up. Not all governors, not you, Louisa, but not all governors are created equal. I can say that because I'm a past governor. But let me give you a quick example. 2 years ago, I had a call from 2 women in their 40s, one from Canada, one from Tennessee. I had spoken in both of those places. They reached out to me. One of them was in tears because she really wanted to throw her hat in the ring to be district governor. And what she was told by the past governors in her district was, you can't, because you work and you won't be able to visit every club in the first 3 months. So you can't be district governor. She was in tears. And I said to her, you tell them to go to hell and you give them my phone number. And she threw her hat in the ring. And she's now the governor-elect of her district, because she could easily visit every club just like this. She doesn't have to travel the width and breadth of her district to see every club. You don't have to do that anymore. And if we can recognize that, and if we can embrace that, we can widen the gene pool of available candidates. People who are younger, people who are working, people who have families. It is a doable job. You just have to you got to get out of your rearview mirror and look out the windshield.
So that's a perfect segue, because you've been very involved in trying to imagine what the view would be out that windshield through the Future of Rotary Club and the other committee and the other groups that you're involved in. So as you think about the work that group is doing, what are you seeing? What are you seeing and what are you imagining? Because it's not going to go back to normal. It's a new normal. So what's it going to look like?
Well, I don't know that I have that answer, but what I do know, I was emailing and I spoke on the phone yesterday with Barry Rassin. Barry's the chairman of the Shaping Rotary's Future Committee. And the focus of that committee might change now. I mean, we were trying to, and we did come up with a new structure, a new method of governance, a new hierarchy for our organization that was better suited for the next several decades, that caused better and more support of our clubs and our participants, our members. And I'm not sure that committee won't refocus right now to this question of how do we take where we were and how do we take where we are and how do we blend those as we're continuing to work on a structure that works for the future. I think it's just a huge opportunity. I am so excited. And in emails to staff yesterday with that question of, isn't this an opportunity? Should we take a comprehensive look of where we were and where we are right now and figure out how we come out of this so that we don't just get through the pandemic and say, okay, pandemic's over, let's go back to business as usual. Right. That would be a lost opportunity.
Totally.
So the president last night in an email suggested that we're going to have a 2-hour session facilitated at our April virtual board meeting on that topic. Yay, yay. A lot of the operational issues that we have to deal with as a board, hi Beacon, we can do that on a consent list. We all get 500 pages of reading to do on a wonderful app called Diligent Boards. And we can read all of that ahead of time, and we can just vote on a consent list to get all that stuff out of the way and spend some time on this question. So as challenging as this time is, and as hard as it is on everyone, oh my goodness, do we have an opportunity here? And we need to grasp it.
So we've got some incoming leaders at the club and district level watching us this morning, participating in our very first show. What do you want to say to them, to people that are thinking about, gosh, I've got whatever number of days and minutes and hours before I'm taking on this role? What should they be thinking in that time period?
That's a great question. So Valerie Wafer, my successor, and I, we talk every day because we've had to change up our priorities for this last couple of months. But it doesn't stop on June 30th. If you're a district governor-elect, if you're a president-elect, if, fingers crossed, the pandemic has waned, the curve has flattened, all of that jargon, the economic impact is going to continue. Some people on this call may be affected with their business. Many businesses will go under. So we're going to have to deal, the incoming officers may not have to deal with the pandemic. They're going to have to deal with the aftermath of the pandemic, which is going to be significant. How do we do that? How do we keep our members connected and not lose 200,000 members because they simply can't afford Rotary? Well, you can afford this. I mean, so I think it's going to be a hybrid. Here's what I've heard from clubs. Somebody on a call a couple of days ago said to me, well, when things get back to normal, whatever that normal will be, can we use Zoom at our club meeting? Can we meet at our place, but can we have Zoom there? And could people who can't attend Zoom into the meeting? I said, yes, do that. Combine Zoom with your regular club meeting and allow people who can't be there to show up. They see you, you see them, they hear you, you can ask questions. So I think that's something that incoming leaders need to embrace. I think that even incoming governors-elect need to look at this platform as a way for them to visit clubs, because you can actually go to a club 2 or 3 times in a year via this and not have to drive 5 hours or fly 2 hours or whatever you have to do. And I'm not discounting face-to-face at all. I'm not suggesting that a governor shouldn't be visible to a club, but I'm visible to you right now. You can hear me. And I'm telling you that I was in your district 4 weeks ago. There was a room full of people there. We had a great time. Great job by Louisa and the gang, Alana and everyone who put that together, Holly. But I've been connected with more clubs and more districts in the past 2 weeks than I ever could have imagined. And there are many clubs that have never even seen a Rotary director. I mean, it's not hard to imagine. There's only 17 of us in the world, and there's 33,000 clubs. And some Rotarians go their entire Rotary career and actually never get to meet a Rotary director. I mean, that's a blessing, I think, to some. But this is just such a huge opportunity for us. A new way for us to engage, a new way for us to do Rotary.
I totally agree, and I love that that those are the sentiments that you're bringing to us at this point. I think that's really important for our incoming leadership to hear and to be thinking about, for club presidents elect and others to be really being innovative in how they move forward. So the board has obviously had to do that. You had a virtual board meeting. You've got a big virtual board meeting coming up. And normally, you're all together for a significant period of time. Can you tell us a little bit about how that board meeting is going to go? And I know you've got the technology for translation and so on, but how will the board meeting be structured, and what do you see as the key topics other than the facilitated discussion about the future? What else is going to happen there?
Well, we'll get some of our typical reports from committees. By the way, newsflash, breaking news, is that what they call it now? Breaking news. Holger, our incoming president-elect, asked me to chair the communications committee next year. So on July 1, I become the new chair of the communications committee. I am so excited about that. That committee is one of our standing committees. It's also one of the committees that has non-Rotarians on it. We have some of the leaders of marketing and public relations from around North America on that committee. And that committee oversees our website, all of our messaging, any of the messaging you've gotten about COVID-19 from our president. I mean, that all comes out of our communications team. Our staff, which is our comm staff in Evanston, is unbelievable. The brand center, all of our brand protection, all of our publications, the Rotarian magazine, all of our regional magazines around the globe. That's the purview of the communications committee. And so I am unbelievably excited. Disappointment, we were supposed to have a meeting in March. That committee meets once in person in Evanston. Well, obviously that didn't happen. It was moved to May, and now that's been canceled. So we're going to meet online. But that's just breaking news. I'm excited about that new opportunity because communications is going to be hugely important. Messaging is going to be hugely important as we go into the next Rotary year. So the board meeting, we'll do some of our typical things. We'll have our full complement of staff there, legal, comms, membership, and they'll report. Our chief financial officer will be there, and we'll deal with all of that stuff. But 2 hours is going to be on this topic of where we were, where we are, where are we going? How do we blend? How do we seize this opportunity? We are at a pivot point, and we're going to pivot.
I would love to be a fly on the wall at that 2 hours. I can tell you, I'm really excited to hear that. I think that's just totally the focus that the board should be having at this point. And I'm also thrilled that you're taking on communications. That's one of the things that this district has recognized is really important, that we need to help as we reintroduce ourselves to the community when we get to our new normal. So one of the things this district is doing is that every club has the opportunity to get a new banner, trying to move away from some of the blue felt. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about blue felt, but to get a new banner, thank you, that every club will have compliments of the district, because obviously there's not as much funding being spent on travel, so we're going to put it into communications and have that happen. So there's a message going today to all club presidents about choosing some of the features of the banner that they would have. You seeing anything else?
All right, I just lost you, so I saw your lips moving, but I didn't hear the question.
Sorry, I was just saying anything that you're seeing otherwise from a communication perspective, and just thoughts about that kind of idea to have consistent banners across the district.
Well, look, I've been a Rotarian for 42 years. I had the privilege of joining when I was 27. So I've got blue and gold felt like scarred into my brain. And clubs will say to me, well, you know, that's our tradition and that's our history. And I say, good, put it in a museum. You know, you don't have to throw it away. I'm not asking you to burn it. You don't have to have a ceremony, but be fresh, be clean, be crisp. When I was in Halifax, did I tell my house analogy?
Yeah, but that was to that group, so go for it again.
So listen to this, folks. How many of you, raise your hand if you own a townhouse, a condo, or a home? Raise your hand. Yeah, good. Congratulations. So if you drive, well, you won't drive because we can't drive right now, but typically you'd pull up, you look at the landscaping, it's spring here in Pennsylvania and all the flowers are coming up and you got those two dead bushes over in the corner. They've been dead for 2 years. You've been meaning to do something about it, but they're kind of invisible to you now. You just kind of have accommodated to it. You walk in the front door and you got that carpet and it's worn here and it's worn there and the stair treads are a disaster. But I mean, you should replace it, but you're comfortable with it. You almost don't even notice it anymore. It's been there for so long. And you go into the kitchen, which was brand new when the house was built in 1945. And you should update it, and it could be refurbished. There's so many better ways you can lay out a kitchen now, but you're used to that. You're comfortable with it. And the paint, I mean, you can go on and on. But for many of us in those homes, we've become comfortable. We've accommodated to it. It's comfortable to us. And when do you change that? When does that change?
When you're ready to sell.
When you're ready to sell. And all of a sudden, you dump $10 or $15 or $20,000 into a house to make it attractive, to give it curb appeal. Because what was comfortable to you would never have been comfortable to somebody that wanted to buy that product, your house. And I'm going to tell you, that's your Rotary Club in many cases. It's comfortable to you. You don't even notice where the culture of your club is gone. You don't notice that you may not be as welcoming to a visitor. Because it's comfortable to you. And I'm going to tell you, you need to position your Rotary clubs to sell. You need to take a hard look at your clubs and figure out, is it the carpet? Is it the paint? Is it the kitchen? Is it all of that? And there's a tool to help you with that called the Club Health Check, where you can do a self-assessment of your club and objectively take a look at, so what do we need to do to position our club to sell? Because that's what you need to do.
Obviously, I love that analogy. I've used that one and had sort of the makeover kitchen kind of picture as one thing that we've talked about a few times. And I think it's so apt, and it's so important to continue to respect and acknowledge and value the history and all of the things that have gotten us to where we are, but to continue to be looking forward. Just before I ask you the next question, Holly, I'm also going to ask folks if they have questions for Jeffrey. We'll have a little bit of time for that. So Holly, our producer, will be checking on the at-home audience for the chat. And if you have questions for Jeffrey, we'll try and have time to take a few of those. So please put them in the chat and Holly will pass those along to us in a couple of minutes.
Well,
so Jeffrey, those are great. Yeah.
Is Evan Burrell on this call?
Yeah, we go national. This is international. Evan Burrell in Australia is on this call.
Where's Evan? I can't see him. Hold on. Where's Evan?
You could unmute Evan if you can.
Hey, g'day, Jeff. How you going, my friend?
Evan, where are you? I'm scrolling here. I haven't seen you yet.
Well, hang on. I'm not actually on video because I am actually I'm driving.
Satellite.
I'm driving at the moment. But anyway, hello.
Hey. How are you, man?
I've got you on the Bluetooth, so I'm driving my car, so I'm listening to everything that you're saying. But I you know, you just don't want to look at me driving. I might hit a car, so I'll turn my video off. But here I am. Hello.
Yeah. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you.
So for those that don't know, Evan runs a wonderful Facebook site that really has incredible tips and interesting and current and topical things around communications. And I've gone to that group a number of times when I've been looking for an image or looking for some help on something. So I'm thrilled that Evan joined us this morning, and I'm so thrilled that we've got people from around the world that are tuning in today to hear Jeffrey. So while people put a few questions on the chat that Holly will share with us, Jeffrey, directors, what exactly do directors do?
Well, so a good question. Let me back up. So there are 17 of us on the board. We are selected from paired zones. So it alternates. So the window opens for a zone every 4 years to elect a director from their zone. So this year, in zones 28 and 32, it's zone 32's turn. 2 years ago, zone 24 at the time selected Valerie, who will succeed me. In September, the zone 32 nominating committee for director, which is made up of a past governor from every district in the zone, will interview candidates who meet the criteria and select the person who will succeed Valerie and succeed me from zone 32. The ramp up period is about 3 years, from director nominee to director elect to director. We get a great orientation so that when we get to our first board meeting on July 1 of our first year on the board, it's a 2-year term, that we're not just floundering, that we can hit the ground running. Our task is pretty simple. We set the policy and the strategy for our international organization. That's what we do. And I'll tell you that has shifted, thankfully. Started with Ian Risley when Ian was president, continued through Barry, has continued through Mark. I believe it will continue through Holger. Because there was a time, and if you go back 10 or 20 years ago, the board would meet and they just, yes, approved, approved. And it was a lot of operational stuff. Not a whole lot of transformational strategic stuff. What we now realize is that we can't allow ourselves to be successful in spite of ourselves. We need to be successful because of ourselves. So Ian started timing at the board meeting how much time we spend on operational, how much time we spend on transformational, how much time we spend on strategic. And I'm telling you, the pendulum has shifted. We have a consent agenda now that allows us to just get a lot of that operational stuff out of the way so that we can spend more time looking forward. So we have 4 board meetings a year, 2 always in Evanston until recently, 1 always at the International Convention, 1 at the International Assembly. And then in between board meetings, we have committee work. We're all assigned to committees. In my case, in my first year and now in my second year, I've been the liaison to the trustees of the foundation. So I attend all of their meetings as well as all of our meetings. I'm on the executive committee. The board delegates a lot of decision-making to the executive committee. So there's a lot of action that takes place there. So in between meetings, we're always in communication with one another. And we now have a WhatsApp group. If you had told me a year ago that the Rotary International Board of Directors would be on a WhatsApp group, I would have thought you were crazy. But that's so that in this time, but that it'll survive this time, we're in connection every day, minute to minute. Somebody will from India, Bharat from India will chime in with something, or there's an opportunity, or there's a challenge, and we can all stay connected. Our colleague from the Philippines, Rafi, his wife Minda, had COVID-19, and it was very serious, and we were able to stay in touch with him day to day, and she's now on the upside. She's on the mend, and hopefully she'll be home by Easter. So a WhatsApp group for the board of directors of Rotary International, whoever would have thought? But what about your district? Could your district have a WhatsApp group? Could your district have a WhatsApp group for your leadership team, where your leadership team could stay in touch with each other day to day with stuff? Because I'm going to tell you, of the 44 districts in the zones that I cover, if for lack of a better word, The most successful districts that I see are the ones where it's not my year, it's our year. Hands down, if somebody said to me, what's the one ingredient for success for a district? I would say leadership team, governor, maybe a past governor, governor-elect, governor nominee designate, have an executive leadership team that makes decisions together. I hate it when people say it's my district and it's my year. It's not my Rotary International.
We've been very fortunate in this district to have had some wonderful leadership over the last few years that helped us get to that point of having a really strong collaborative approach. And as you know, I've experimented with some things just this year, not even using the title, to try and emphasize that, and to not visit all clubs, to again try and set a pattern that says it doesn't have to always be the same. It can change from year to year and go back and forth. But I know those were things that you were supportive of, which I'm very grateful of, but maybe you could just speak to those kinds of things a little bit more around, ways to think about doing things differently to just position the whole organization in new ways.
Yeah, look, the structure that we have, the structure we have, the manner of governance and hierarchy was built in the 1950s. And if I wanted to talk to Louisa back then, I either picked up the phone and called her on a landline. We didn't have cell phones, and maybe it was a party line, or I mailed her a letter. And that was kind of it. Well, times have changed. Witness this. I mean, we have just so many ways that we can engage and communicate and connect, and yet we're still dealing with a structure and a hierarchy that was built in a day when we couldn't. So that's where we need to get to. We need to be able, and the goal is not just to change for change's sake, but we need to rock the boat. We don't want to capsize the ship. We're trying to figure out what is the glue that holds us together. If the glue is structure, we're in deep trouble. I don't think the glue is structure. I think the glue is people. I think the glue is fellowship. I think the glue is service. And I think if we modify the structure, it's not going to capsize the ship. The challenge is that the way that we do Rotary is different around the globe. The way we do Rotary in North America is very different than, say, India or Japan or Korea, where structure is embraced, where because of their culture, they love the structure. So we're trying to think of a regional approach where, okay, here's what we'll support. If you want to be over here, you can do that. We're not going to fund that, you fund that. But how can we regionalize how we do Rotary so that we're not still trying to put a round peg in a square hole, that we're not trying to do the same around the world, because Rotary these days is not the same around the world. So that's what we're trying to think about, is a more regional approach. What's going to happen out of the Shaping Rotary's Future Committee is we'll come up with this model. The board has already seen it. They gave the green light to go forward. There'll be an implementation plan. We'll do some financial impact on it. We think it'll be cheaper. We don't know that yet. And then we'll pilot it. And we'll pilot it maybe in 2 or 3 or 6 different places around the world. And then we'll tweak it. And if we find out that we've got it right, then we'll roll it out.
Right.
And let me just say something also about the Council on Legislation, which is coming up in 2022. That's our parliamentary body. That's the only place where you can change the constitutional documents of our organization, our bylaws, and our constitution. It's often a conservative body. It was very progressive in 2016. The most recent one in 19 wasn't quite as progressive, but I think there's another opportunity here, because I think that the council in 2022 could potentially consider and pass things because of this pandemic we've had that they never would have. And so it's another thing for us to look at, another opportunity to help to move the organization forward, a silver lining, if you will, of this pandemic.
Right. We're just about to go out to look for our nominee who will be part of that. And in fact, I think on this call, we have one of the leaders of the whole process, Duncan Conrad in our district is in a senior leadership role around that whole process. So that's something that we're pretty excited about. Holly, do we have any questions that have come to you?
Yeah, and actually our first question is on Duncan Conrad, so I'll pass it over to him.
While he's doing that, I'm going to grab another coffee, if you don't mind.
Duncan, you need to unmute yourself, or Holly, if you could unmute Duncan so he can have his question when Jeffrey gets his, there we go.
Okay.
He can probably still hear you, so go ahead, Duncan.
Okay, Jeffrey, if you can hear me, I want you to look over my left shoulder.
Yep.
You're going to see another little stuffed animal there. That's a puppy of Beacon. And that puppy's name is Charlotte, and Charlotte's traveled all over the world with me. So first of all, just to refresh your memory, I was your RRFC when you were the director-elect, and Valerie was my my assistant. So lots of good times during those years as well. And thank you for everything that you've done. Right now, I want to send some kudos out to our leadership team, Louisa, Alana, and Holly in particular, because during this very difficult time when we have a lot of clubs who are not, who are technologically challenged, they've really stepped up and done an excellent job in terms of equipping clubs to carry on their day-to-day operations. And we've done a number of, as many of you online have known, if you had a chance to participate in them, they're excellent. Number of training sessions that allow people to actually organize and run Zoom meetings. And so we are, as you've already said, now leagues ahead of where we would be had we not been faced with this issue. And it's also provided us with some great membership opportunities, believe it or not. So think back to all of those people in our clubs who have said, look, I'm too busy, I can't attend a regular meeting, or those people that you've invited to Rotary and then they've decided because of their schedule they can't come. So now you have an opportunity to reach out to all of those former members and to, you know, in my club's case, we've just had a membership recruitment session, a Discover Rotary session about a month and a half ago, 16 people. We got one, but the other 15 will now have an opportunity to come and join us virtually, and we might actually get some of those folks.
Good
and
stuff.
the other point I want to make is
this
actually,
wasn't a question. I'm waiting for the question, but there's no question.
No, there's no question.
Oh,
That's
okay.
right. Just observations. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is another observation from your colleague. I was online yesterday with Dave Stovall, who was doing a similar kind of thing in Florida, and he made a really important point. He said, we can reach out on Zoom to all our members, but remember there are a lot of our members who don't have the opportunity to hook up or not capable of doing that. We need to remember that we're an organization built on fellowship, and we need to reach out to those people in whatever manner we can to maintain that connectivity. So thank you again for everything you do, and we appreciate your efforts.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Duncan.
you.
It's Duncan that has the major role with the Council of Legislation. So thank you, Duncan, for that. Holly, do you have questions from anyone?
Yeah, the next question is from Kelly. You spoke about hardships due to COVID-19. Has any consideration been given to subsidizing RI dues for 2021?
No, and I get that question on every call. I don't know if it will be an agenda item at our April board meeting or not. What I will tell you is that a significant portion of our operating budget comes from our RI dues. And I will tell you that all of our staff is working. They're working from home, but they're working harder now than they ever have for you. So, we're going to have to see the numbers. We only do data-driven decisions anymore at the board. We have to consider whether or not we're going to have a membership loss during this. But our budget is driven by our dues from you. What I've suggested to people is on a local level, it's easy. It's possible for a district or a club to take an action on their dues because maybe their operating expenses are less now. You're not having lunches. You're not having to pay a venue. You're not having to do a lot of things. And so districts and clubs can certainly do what they want or can to help members. But from an RI perspective, RI dues, that hasn't come across. I don't even know if that'll be an agenda item in April. But the fact is, our staff is working harder than ever right now, and they get paid through your dues.
Hey, Holly, I think Evan had a question that I see, which maybe I'll just read because I know he's driving. Evan's question is, how do we re-energize members to support end polio after COVID-19? And will polio levels rise because of COVID-19 and lack of on-ground vaccination?
Good question. The infrastructure from our polio efforts helped with the Ebola outbreak. It's helping a bit with COVID-19. We've had to cancel some NIDs because of this pandemic, because people are sheltered in place and all that kind of stuff. John Germ and Mike McGovern just put out a letter. It's on the Zone website right now. It'll be in our newsletter, which comes out May 1. But again, that question of should we divert funding to COVID? No. 2 battles, 2 wars. We need to continue to fight both. And so the Polio Oversight Committee is aware of this. Coming out of this pandemic, we cannot we cannot take our eye off the ball. We need to continue our efforts and get this thing done. I know we're going to run short on time here, Louisa. Can I talk about volunteer surge?
Yep, absolutely.
So there's a really smart group out in California who just 12 days ago, the group is called Global Impact, and they came up with a project called Volunteer Surge. And the project, the goal was to mobilize and engage 1 million volunteers in the next 2 to 3 weeks, aimed at COVID-19. One of the questions I get most often on these calls is, how can we help? Where can we help? How can we best, as Rotarians, help? So District 5160 out in California engaged 2 days ago. And if you go to the website, tgig.org, G as in George, tgig.org, you'll see Rotary clubs and districts there. You'll see LinkedIn, Amazon, CNN, the New York Times. I mean, we have some amazing partners in this. They reached out to Rotary because they knew that to get volunteers, we had the network. When District 5160 engaged, they had 300 volunteers in one day. And what we're doing is, if you go on tgig.org, you can take a 10-hour online course, which certifies you to do telemedicine and telehelp from your home. So you can supplement a health system or a health department or a doctor's office. And Salesforce is part of the team, and they will deploy. Once you become certified, they will deploy you to an area of need in your community or in your region or in your country. Because if you're doing telemedicine, it could be anywhere. They reached out to me because they wanted to engage New York. New York is having a hell of a time right now. And so about a week ago, I spoke with the 3 New York governors, the colleagues of Luisa's, Mahboub, Cindy, and Justin. They were excited. They are all going to engage probably by tomorrow. I'm speaking to their districts tonight and tomorrow morning. And we're hoping to engage hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteers that can help supplement the COVID-19 efforts in New York. Once they get on the ground, we're going to roll it out to zones 28 and 32. David Stovall has got 2 districts in Florida and Georgia that are on board. And what we know is we can't provide them with 1 million volunteers, but here's the beauty of it. Our demographics suggest that many of our people are going to take the 10-hour online course, but there's a 30-hour online course that allows you to become a certified nurse assistant, not licensed, but certified, specifically toward the COVID-19 effort. You could be on the front lines. You could be out on the front lines supplying some type of ancillary help that is desperately needed right now. And once you complete those courses, then you will be deployed. Clubs can reach out into their communities and say, hey, volunteer surge. Do you want to be a part? And if they access the system, the drop-down menu says, are you a Rotarian? Are you a friend of a Rotarian? Are you a family member of a Rotarian? And we'll be able to track all of that data. We'll be able to track how many people we mobilized. Public awareness, public understanding, someone from your community who's sitting at home thinking, I want to help, and you, Rotary, give them a way to plug in and help.
Awesome.
Bingo. So
Yeah.
Volunteer Surge, I think it's going to, the website is live right now, and I think you'll start seeing it and hearing about it in the media, but tgig.org. Check it out. Volunteer
I see
Surge.
people writing that down, so that's great. I'm just going to ask Holly, we could take one more, Holly, and then we've got a little fun thing to end with. Anything else burning that we haven't addressed?
There is a question about passport clubs, but we have addressed that in other sessions, so I'm not sure if you want to do that one again.
Well, maybe we could just get Jeffrey to speak to it quickly, and I'll share my screen. We may lose seeing Jeffrey because I'm going to move to something else from a screen perspective, but Jeffrey could respond to that.
Well, look, here's what we know. We have this new initiative in North America called our Innovative Club Advocates. We brought them into Evanston in January, 20 of them handpicked from across zones 2832 and from around the US. And we trained them. And we trained them because Grow Rotary, which is not a membership campaign. Grow Rotary is grow our awareness, grow our understanding, grow the foundation, and grow our membership. We trained them specifically on new innovative club models, Passport being one of them, theme-based clubs, corporate clubs, models of engagement and access that we haven't even invented yet. And we've deployed them now. And of course, the pandemic has interfered with that a little bit, but we just had a call with them the other night because there's an opportunity here with how we're meeting right now, which is a little bit how passport clubs meet. Some of them meet Zoom and service, some of them meet in person and service, but passport clubs is just one of our new innovative models to allow better access points to people who otherwise could not access us. I don't know if that answered the question, but Louisa, take it away.
Yep, no, that's great. Okay, we're going to try something here in a second and see if this works. It may or may not. I had a few little issues earlier with sharing screen, so we're just going to try. Holly, is it coming up?
Yes, you are up.
And is it the right direction?
3, 2, 1.
There's no sound.
No sound.
Okay, why don't I have sound?
I could sing.
No, I don't want you to do that.
Okay. Yeah. No, nobody
Okay.
does.
We don't have sound. Well, we're going to do it anyway. We had isolation feud, and you were going to see if the sound was there, which it just disappeared. You were going to have the feud music, but we don't have that. So I don't know why we don't. And we're just going to go there.
Here
Now
it
you
is.
do. Now you do. I don't know why you do. Okay, so I know, Jeffrey, that this is going to be a question that you've got some interesting ideas for. And the question is that we're going to ask people to answer. And the way they have to come up with choices is to raise your hand. So it's a test to see who knows how to use Zoom and the raise your hand function in the chat line. So the question is about words and phrases that we have all come to use in sentences over the last couple of weeks that maybe we never want to hear again. And Jeffrey's got his hand up, so I want to let Jeffrey go first. And there will be quizzes and things like this over the next 12 weeks as we do this. So if you get a right answer, your name will be entered into a draw for an allegedly fabulous prize. So we're going to let Jeffrey go, and then the rest will be, Holly will be looking for hands up. So Jeffrey.
Phrases I never want to hear again. But that's the way we've always done it.
No,
No.
because that's going to continue. This is one that you didn't understand the question, understand the instructions. The idea here is these are words and phrases that we're using now with COVID that, yes, we don't want to ever use that one again, but it's not COVID related. I wasn't clear enough. So I'm going to let you have another one. This is a word or a phrase related to this whole COVID piece that we don't want to hear again later. It's overused at the moment. Do you have one?
Uncharted territory.
I think you might have that one.
Ah,
Hey, you're in. Okay, Holly, do we have anybody with another guess?
Yep, the first one was Alana.
Okay, Alana.
No. Social distancing.
Oh, easy.
Honestly.
Okay, the next one is Kelly from her iPad.
Kelly, what have you got?
No last name.
Kelly.
So I'll unmute her. Okay, go ahead, Kelly.
Stay the blazes home.
Oh my gosh, Kelly. Stay the blazes home. Yay. Good one. Okay, next one. Anybody
Okay.
else?
I'm kind of keep track of these. Jimmy, maybe? I got no last name.
Oh, sorry, I can't stop it now anyway. Who's the next one?
Jimmy?
What's your guess?
I don't know how you did this, but it's great.
Who's next?
Okay, Jimmy, Jimng, and he's unmuted now.
Okay, what's your guess? 3 more.
Social distancing.
We already had that one. See, it's there. You can do another one if you can guess another one.
Yeah, but the stay the blazes home and
They're done.
they're
Been there,
all
done
gone,
that.
they're all gone.
Come on, 3 more.
Okay, BDENY.
That
Bill.
B for Bill. I'm gonna have to change that, but I would say flatten the curve.
Yeah. Good one.
Yay, Bill. Another one in the draw. 2 left.
Okay,
I'll
George.
give you a hint that one of them is just one word that we're hearing an awful lot.
Unprecedented.
Who said that?
Sheila.
Sheila, you got it. And the last one, I'll give you a hint. It's about stuff that we talk an awful lot about. It covers a lot of different things, and that was a hint.
Okay, so back to, just let me look here. Got so many going here.
Wash your hands.
That one we're
Kelly's-
gonna keep doing. I didn't include that because it's not going to stop. We're not going to stop talking about washing your hands. You have
Okay.
to listen to the instructions, Jeffrey.
So one went to,
I'm going to tell you.
back
All
to
the stuff related to masks and personal protective equipment and all of those things. These are things that hopefully we aren't going to need to talk about. We're still going to talk about, that's the way we've always done it, and try and get rid of that. We're still going to talk about washing hands and all those things. But thank you very much for doing that. This is the end of episode 1 of Welcome to our Coffee and Conversation with. I'm going to show you a little bit about who's upcoming on our next episodes for the next 11 weeks. And I want to thank Jeffrey very, very much for participating with us on our very first. Beacon and I were thrilled that you were there. Beacon was happy to survive the abuse that he withstood at your hands when you were here, but he's okay. And so we're delighted. So thank you all very much. We'd be delighted to have any feedback and any suggestions for future episode sort of organization. We've got most of the speakers ready, and I'm going to show you who they are momentarily. So thanks all.
And while you're doing that, great job. Great
Thank
job.
you. Thanks, Jeffrey. So there's who's coming up, and a little bit of a Canadian band that you can listen to for a little bit, because it's Lovers in a Dangerous Time. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Bye, everybody.
See you later, everybody. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. See you.
Thanks, Evan. Delighted to have you from down under.
My screen, anyway.
No, people coming up.
Oh,
Or all of you.
I'm leaving. Oh, maybe I'm not. Yeah, they unmuted them all. All right.
Once you have applied for the
All right.
you see how to Evan for the next
Hi, Louisa.
Bye. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Louisa.
Take care, everybody.
working actually. No,
We'll end it momentarily. Just wanted you to see who's coming.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Louisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
just because you are
Au revoir à tous.
actually so I'm just making note of it. So that not so all right, so that
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
I will still keep a note of all the hours that you've given on corners and
You can end it now, Holly.
but it is not.
Okay.
Then accordingly, then what I was doing is these 2 weeks salary, then I will not release at all. Then I will not.
Bye, everyone. Off we go.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
You will see that the house is going to officially. The little all